It's desperate times, desperate measures for an increasingly desperate president. In a primetime address last night, bearing the tone, tenor, and volume of a person shouting into a bullhorn on a street corner, Donald Trump all but told the American people to pipe down and listen to how good they've got it under Donald Trump. It had everything we've come to expect from any one of his campaign rallies: overstatements, understatements, mathematical impossibilities, deep-seated grievances, and through it all, lies, and more outrageous lies. Entirely absent, in contrast, were the words Medicare, Medicaid, guns, debt, climate, Venezuela, bipartisanship, healing, uniting. In fact, Trump's tirade was nearly indistinguishable from what you might find on his Truth Social feed. It lacked any major policy announcement other than distribution of so-called warrior dividends. It's something Defense One today identifies as a bit of a rebrand for a troop housing subsidy already approved by Congress. And Trump said he'd pay for those bonuses with revenue raised from tariffs. The fate of tariffs is currently before the United States Supreme Court. Friend of this program, Tom Nicolle, in The Atlantic today, writes that the announcement of that bonus was a low-character attempt to buy the loyalty of our beloved men and women in the armed forces. Quote, "We could take apart Trump's fake facts, as checkers and pundits will do in the next few days. But perhaps more important than false statements, which for Trump are par for the course, was his demeanor. Americans saw a president drenched in panic as he tried to bully an entire nation into admitting he's doing a great job. For 20 minutes, he vented his hurt feelings without a molecule of empathy or awareness. Economic concerns? Shut up, you fools. The economy's doing fine. And if it isn't, it's not his fault, it's Joe Biden's."
It's desperate times, desperate measures for an increasingly desperate president. In a primetime address last night, bearing the tone, tenor, and volume of a person shouting into a bullhorn on a street corner, Donald Trump all but told the American people to pipe down and listen to how good they've got it under Donald Trump. It had everything we've come to expect from any one of his campaign rallies: overstatements, understatements, mathematical impossibilities, deep-seated grievances, and through it all, lies, and more outrageous lies. Entirely absent, in contrast, were the words Medicare, Medicaid, guns, debt, climate, Venezuela, bipartisanship, healing, uniting. In fact, Trump's tirade was nearly indistinguishable from what you might find on his Truth Social feed. It lacked any major policy announcement other than distribution of so-called warrior dividends. It's something Defense One today identifies as a bit of a rebrand for a troop housing subsidy already approved by Congress. And Trump said he'd pay for those bonuses with revenue raised from tariffs. The fate of tariffs is currently before the United States Supreme Court. Friend of this program, Tom Nicolle in The Atlantic today, writes that the announcement of that bonus was a low-character attempt to buy the loyalty of our beloved men and women in the armed forces. By the way, I am trying to do my best to gather all the information I can for you and share it with you. Please leave your likes and comments, and I would be grateful if you subscribed. Let's continue. Quote, "We could take apart Trump's fake facts, as fact-checkers and pundits will do in the next few days. But perhaps more important than false statements, which for Trump are par for the course, was his demeanor. Americans saw a president drenched in panic as he tried to bully an entire nation into admitting he's doing a great job. For 20 minutes, he vented his hurt feelings without a molecule of empathy or awareness. Economic concerns? Shut up, you fools. The economy is doing fine. And if it isn't, it's not his fault. It's Joe Biden's." And on that final point, Trump, already the blame game world champ, outdid himself last night, nearly 1 year into his term, and this is a taste of what the speech sounded like. Good evening, America. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, a Democrat administration. This is what the Biden administration allowed to happen to our country. Do you remember when Joe Biden, the last administration, and their allies in Congress, under the Biden administration, Democrat politicians under Biden, and the steep increase in premiums being demanded by the Democrats? And it's their fault. It is not the Republicans' fault. It's the Democrats' fault. And the Democrat Party, the radical left Democrats, 30 to 100% under Biden, the Democrat inflation disaster, $15,000 under Democrat rule, the worst thing that the Biden administration did to our country. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. God bless you all. Kind of needs to be in like a support group with the rest of us who missed the last normal president. Infinitely more important, though, for our purposes, the man who gave that speech last night. More important than him and anything he said or did or how he said and did it were the people he was addressing, the American people, and how the American people say they feel right now. According to the latest polling from NPR, PBS, and Marist, 57% of all Americans feel, quote, pessimistic about what is ahead for the world next year, compared to 43% who feel optimistic. Those numbers were almost exactly flipped 1 year ago when, not for nothing, Joe Biden was president. NPR points this out, quote, 70% in the survey said the area where they live is not very affordable or not affordable at all for an average family. That's up from 45% when Marist asked the same question in June, a whopping increase and a sign of how much people are feeling the economic pinch. Yet last night, Trump told Americans how to feel. He gave SNL so much material to work with, and he spoke for his accomplishments instead of letting them speak for themselves. Wonder why? Joining the discussion are former senior advisor to President Biden and Vice President Harris, former mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landrieu. Also, senior political analyst Alex Wagner and former Republican Congressman David Jolly of Florida, who is running for governor of Florida as a Democrat. David Jolly, what did you think? It's great to be with you. I watched the president's address, and I've never been more optimistic that Democrats can now win statewide in the state of Florida. And I mean that for a very specific reason, Nicolle. I've now done 140 events since I was probably last with you, running for governor of the state of Florida. And we talk about the affordability crisis. The whole world knows we have an affordability crisis largely defined around access to housing, the ability to stay in one's housing, access to health care, the cost of health care, utilities, transportation, and so forth. What we saw last night was a president who is completely out of touch, who is creating this gilded presidency so detached from the reality of people on the ground. And I would also suggest that from my experience in the last year, it's far greater than just an affordability crisis. I am convinced, heartbreakingly convinced, that we are at a generational inflection point in the economy where we are losing the middle. The economy is slipping away from people. I think something we've been unable to measure in the past several years is we've already lost upward mobility for a lot of people. This has been a bit of a discovery. Look, when Mitch was working with the president and vice president, we could make the case, as Joe Biden was leaving office, that real wages were going up. Inflation was coming down. More people were going to work than ever before. Access to housing, retirement security was still at all-time highs, but people didn't feel it. There's an anxiety and an anger right now that people's access to housing is slipping away, that the upward mobility is slipping away. People are uncertain about their health care, and it is real. It is real, and it is crippling people. And what we saw last night was a president who said, I don't believe you, and you shouldn't believe yourself either. When people are desperately in need of hope, they need someone to offer them hope. He didn't offer hope last night. He told people they were wrong. And when people are looking for hope, they need somebody they can trust. Donald Trump's approval ratings and trust ratings are in the basement at an all-time low. People don't trust him. And so what I saw last night was a president not only disconnected from reality, but the leader of a party that has continued to empower and elevate him in this moment of generational crisis. Look, to put it in raw political terms, there is incredible opportunity for Democrats right now if we respond to this anxiety. But if we put it in historic terms, this is a nation on the brink of some real trouble if that's the current leadership we have. Mitch, I'd like you to pick up on that. Trump's wealth he was a political unicorn in that he was this incredibly wealthy guy who was crass in a way that made people feel seen for his rebuke of elites and political correctness. But his wealth was alluring. He made it feel contagious. In his second presidency, he has actually gilded the Oval Office. There are on one wall 37 additional gold things. And his indifference to not just economic ambition, but people's economic despair feels like an epic example of political betrayal from the leader of a party that just got elected on the issue of economic promises. Well, first of all, I think David's comments were on point. I would just mention a couple of things. Not everybody in the country thinks in political terms. The President of the United States is supposed to be the president for everybody. That person is supposed to emote an ethos that makes the country feel good about itself and lifts itself up. And what's so sad and tragic about the address last night is you're watching a guy really, to the extent that he ever had a touch, lose the touch. His fastball's gone. He can't pitch a curveball. He threw a Hail Mary and it just went through the floor. But as we come upon this Christmas season, which for so many people in the country, whether they're people of faith or not, is a time of renewal, of rebirth, there is, and I know David feels this in Florida because I've traveled the country as well. People are thirsting for us to put aside all the chaos, all the hate, all the corruption, all this stuff that just feels really, really icky. Now, it's manifesting itself in people's real need to find some sort of security in their economic life, which they don't have. But I agree with David. It's actually falling into a malaise that's much more complicated and difficult that's going to be hard to come out of. And what the country is thirsting for is a leader that's going to realize that, and that's going to help us come back together. But what they saw last night was just the most banal example of a man that is just delusional, out of touch, just a rampant liar. Not much of what he said was actually accurate at all. In fact, when you fact check this thing, you know that on the day that Joe Biden left office and Donald Trump assumed office, that inflation was at 3%. It had come down from 9%. It wasn't going up, it was going down. Joe Biden was producing 336,000 jobs on average a month. Donald Trump is not. So now inflation's gone up, costs have gone up. The number of people that are not working is going up. And when you go to tell people how they're supposed to be feeling and they're experiencing something very different, and you're sitting in a building which you knocked down half of, but you're building another $400 million building, and you're giving a tax cut to the wealthy, and these people are struggling, you can't get upset that they're going like, look, what the hell is really going on? And you can see it in the numbers because the American people know what time it is. And I think they have displayed that in the polling numbers that we have. But it was just really a shame. I really feel sorry right now, a sadness. And if it wasn't so tragic and serious, it would almost be laughable. But we're at an inflection point, and we need to decide in this country, Republican, Democrat, progressive, conservative, that we've got to get our feet back underneath us and demand more from the president and, of course, from the Supreme Court, from the Senate, and from Congress to get some stuff done that's going to help the American people. Let me add crucial context here, because what we witnessed last night was a president in full panic mode trying to gaslight an entire nation about economic realities they're experiencing every single day. First, the facts. Biden left office with inflation at 3%, down from a peak of 9.1%. Job creation averaged 336,000 per month. The economy was recovering from COVID supply shocks and showing strong fundamentals. Trump took over and immediately imposed tariffs that raised prices. Job creation has collapsed to about 64,000 last month, roughly 110,000 total in 6 months. Unemployment jumped to 4.6%. Inflation ticked back up. Healthcare premiums are doubling as ACA subsidies expire. These are objective, measurable facts, not opinions, not partisan spin, facts. But Trump stands there nearly a year into his term, blaming Biden for everything. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, the Democrat inflation disaster, what Biden did to our country, except Biden isn't president anymore. Trump is. And every single economic indicator has gotten worse under Trump's policies. That's not Biden's fault. That's Trump's fault. The tariffs? Trump policy. Healthcare subsidies expiring? Republicans refuse to extend them. Job creation collapsing? That's happening under Trump. Manufacturing investment down? Trump's tariffs are driving companies away. But instead of taking responsibility, Trump spent 20 minutes venting his hurt feelings and telling Americans they're wrong about their own economic experiences. You think groceries are expensive? Shut up, the economy is fine. You're struggling with housing costs? Stop complaining, I inherited a mess. David Jolly's analysis is devastating. He's done 140 events in Florida talking to voters, and what he's seeing is worse than an affordability crisis. It's a generational inflection point where upward mobility is disappearing, where the middle class is being hollowed out, where people's dreams of home ownership and economic security are slipping away. And Trump's response? Telling them they're wrong to feel that way. Telling them actually everything is great. Announcing warrior dividends that are just a rebranding of existing programs while building a $400 million golden ballroom in the White House. The contrast couldn't be starker. People struggling to afford rent while Trump gilds the Oval Office. People choosing between groceries and health care while Trump gives tax cuts to billionaires. People desperate for hope while Trump tells them to shut up and be grateful. Mitch Landrieu's point about Trump losing his fastball is perfect. Trump's political superpower was always making his wealth feel aspirational, making working class people believe they could be like him, making his success feel contagious. But in his second term, the wealth isn't aspirational anymore. It's insulting. It's disconnected. It's a billionaire in a gilded palace telling struggling families they're imagining their economic pain. The polling tells the story. 57% of Americans feel pessimistic about the future. That number was flipped a year ago under Biden. 70% say their area is unaffordable, up from 45% in June. Trump's approval and trust ratings are in the basement. People don't trust him. They don't believe him. And last night showed them why. Because he stood there lying to their faces about an economy they experience every day, blaming his predecessor for problems caused by his own policies, offering no hope, no solutions, no empathy, just grievances and blame and demands that Americans accept his version of reality over their own lived experiences. As we approach Christmas, people want renewal. They want hope. They want a leader who sees them, understands their struggles, and offers real solutions. Instead, they got Trump shouting at them for 20 minutes about how wrong they are to be worried. That's political malpractice. That's a president who's lost touch with reality. And as David Jolly says, it's creating enormous opportunity for Democrats if they respond to this anxiety with real solutions and genuine empathy. But it's also dangerous because we're at a generational inflection point. The social contract is breaking down. People's faith in upward mobility is being destroyed. And the president is building a $400 million ballroom while telling them they're wrong to be struggling. That's not leadership. That's delusion. And the American people know it. The polling shows it. The special election results show it. The defections from Trump show it. He's weak. He's panicking. And last night's speech proved it. Because when you're strong and successful, you don't spend 20 minutes yelling at people that they're wrong about their own economic experiences. You show them the results. You let your accomplishments speak for themselves. You offer hope and solutions. Trump did none of that because he has no results to show, no accomplishments to point to, no hope to offer, just blame, just lies, just desperate attempts to gaslight an entire nation into believing things are fine when everyone knows they're not. Subscribe to follow this because the 2026 midterms are coming. And speeches like last night's are exactly why Democrats are going to win, because you can't gaslight people about their grocery bills. You can't lie about job creation when unemployment is rising. You can't build a $400 million palace while telling struggling families they're imagining their economic pain. The American people aren't stupid. They know what they're experiencing, and they're going to vote accordingly.